our kids get to see it or whatnot. Why? Because we have become so accustomed to it. Paul is in this major city of Athens, a city which was renowned for its philosophical and educational pursuits. But Paul says, no, I have a conviction. I have a conviction. I can't simply sit and wait for Paul and for Silas and Timothy to show up. I need to speak up. I need to call, we'd say today, a spade a spade. I need to speak up. I need to share the genuine conviction that Paul has. But we go on reading here and we see the fact that there's the genuine conviction, but Paul has a broad knowledge of the society. 3 weeks ago when we started looking at Paul with this little journey, we talked about the fact that Paul was a Pharisee, a religious leader, Jewish religious leader. He was a Roman citizen, and he was brought up within the Greek culture, the Roman culture, with academically, but he was also taught under one of the greatest Jewish teachers of their day. So Paul's bridging all the different worlds of his day. What we read here is that a group of Epicureans and Stoic philosophers began to dispute with Paul, and some of them asked, what is this babbler trying to say? And the word babbler simply means a bird which is picking up various seeds. What is this babbler trying to say? Others remarked, Paul seems to be advocating foreign gods. They said this because Paul was preaching the good news about Jesus and the resurrection. At one point in time, before Paul's on the scene, in the town of Athens, which it had about 100,000 plus people, there were 4 various groups of teachings. When Paul shows up, there's the 2. There's the Epicurean and there's the Stoic. The first group, the first teaching, was a teaching that said there's no heaven, there's no resurrection, there's no life after death. Sort of reminds you of the Sadducees, the religious leaders, the Jewish religious leaders. There's no life after death. There's nothing beyond what we have here and now. And so because this is all there is, let's enjoy it. Let's have fun. Let's party and make merry and do whatever we want to do with our bodies and connect up with whoever you want to connect up with. And it's all okay because we're having fun and enjoying life. So, Paul is talking about, and some of you can't see real well with that, but Paul is talking about the resurrection. So the first group of people, the Epicureans, are saying, whoa, wait, we really don't believe in the resurrection because we're just concerned about the here and now, how it feels. Let's touch each other. Let's be involved like that way with each other. There's no ramification. The second group, the Stoics, they believed in what we would call today pantheism, meaning that God is in all and God is part of all. That this table up here is part of God. That my body is part of God. The building that we're in is part of God. Pantheon teaches that all is part of who God is. The Stoics were more fatalists. They believed that there was a fatalism within life. So what we see is the first group believed pleasure was the top. The second group up here, the Stoics, said that it was universal law was supreme. And Paul comes to Athens, which is at that time the literary capital of the ancient world. It's the culture of the Roman world is right there academically. It's where philosophers, it's where scholars, it's where orators, sculptors, painters, poets were all there. And Paul comes to them, and Paul says to them, well, before Paul says, they take him and they bring him to the meeting of the place of the Areopagus, where they said to him, may we know this new teaching that you are presenting. You're bringing some strange ideas to our ears. We want to know what they mean. little side note in the Bible that says that all Athenians and their foreigners loved to live there, spending their time doing nothing but just listening to the latest and the greatest ideas. Not like some Americans following the latest and the greatest fads. With that, to get the bigger picture of what's going on here in Athens, I got a couple of pictures up here from today. In Athens, there was this Acropolis of Athens, which was a temple mount, which, if you look online, you can see there's about 10 to 15 different worship areas for different gods. Remember, the Greeks worshipped the pantheon of gods. They had all Zeus and all the other gods that they worshipped. Up on this mountainside was all different buildings to all these different Greek gods. There's also what's called the Areopagus, which is the Roman word meaning Mars Hill. Some of you maybe have heard Mars Hill before. Mars Hill it's just northwest of where all the worship was being done, and it functioned as the High Court of Appeals. This is where Paul was taken to defend, to talk about, to share his faith in Jesus Christ. So what we see here is that Paul then stands up in the meeting of this area, and he says, "Men of Athens, I see that in every way you are very religious. For as I walked around and looked very carefully at all the objects of worship, I even found an altar with the inscription, 'To an unknown God.' Now that which you worship is something unknown. I am going to proclaim to you." So Paul has a genuine conviction for the people that he's with. Paul has a broad knowledge of his life, that it all comes down to assist in who he is. He has a profound simplicity of the gospel. Sometimes we think that when we present the gospel, when we talk about our faith with somebody else, we have to be all high and mighty. We got to intellectually have all these arguments to defend the Christian faith. The reality is we do not. The reality is we defend the Christian faith by simply saying, this is what Christ has done for me. I mean, who can argue with your own experience with Jesus Christ? So what we see here, though, is this is interesting because to an unknown God, the people in Athens were so concerned that they wanted to have all these various ways to God, to heaven, they didn't want to offend anybody. What do we have going on within New Age today in America? There's multi-teachings of multi-ways to get to heaven, to have that eternal relationship with a higher power. It's interesting, AA started out as a Christian organization. The higher power was believed to be God. Even today, the organizations of AA that take God out of it, they don't work as well. Because the reality is it's a spiritual issue. So Paul here says, I see as I'm going around the town that there is an altar to this unknown God. This is interesting. The Greek word unknown God, is the Greek word agnosto, of which we today get the word agnostic. Agnostic. Okay, I won't ask you, but we often hear about agnostics or atheists. Now, you don't have to answer, but do you think there's a difference between the two? Or are they the same? Don't answer, but you think there's a... Some people get confused and they think they're the same. An atheist is one who, the word theist means God. A in the Greek is not. So an atheist does not believe in a God. An atheist will say, there is no God. I heard about 10 years ago, it was on a talk show, and it was an atheist from California, and he was talking about prayer in public schools. I loved what he had to say. He said for him as an atheist, prayer in public schools doesn't bother him at all. And the person that was talking to him said, well, why is that? And he said, because I don't believe in God. He goes, I don't understand why my other atheist friends get upset when there's prayer in a public area or public schools or any place else, because if we don't believe in God, why does it bother us? Made sense to me. An atheist, theism, God.